Welcome back to episode 342 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And as we always say, who knows where it goes when the beer flows? Well, that beer's flowing in a very interesting direction again, as we are once more bound for the United States of America. Now, there's no guest tonight. He's feeling a little bit under the weather. I think he had one too many beers celebrating his team winning the darts final on the midweek area. But he's pretty pleased with it. He's pretty pleased with himself, so much so that he couldn't make it tonight. So he sends his apologies. He didn't, but I've added them there for him. But we are joined by another guest. Vic, did you want to say hello and tell us a little bit about why we invited you on the podcast?
So my name is Vic Walter. I actually work in the broadcast media industry, but one of my favorite pastimes is the steampunk, getting into the steampunk community and getting into different sorts of things that kind of help extend that creativity of what everything that has to offer that is in steampunk. And I'm pretty sure that that's part of what we're going to cover today in your show.
Amen. Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to cover off. First of all, though, I just need to get your take on it. We had Victoria on, not last episode, but the episode before, and we discussed, she was an author. She wrote steampunk stories, amongst other things. She liked vampire stories as well, which I guess aren't too far away from that genre either. There's certainly a crossover if you were to make a Venn diagram of it. But just tell us from your own perspective exactly what steampunk is and what it means to you.
Well, I think first and foremost, it's a community-based sci-fi fantasy with a dab of Victorian British history dabbed in there, and it's really, at least from my perspective and my involvement with it and how I was brought into it, that it's more of a society and a kind of an escape from reality, so to speak, to be around like-minded people who are into the same thing, and it just kind of grows and manifests off of it that way.
That's cool. I mean, I always like, a reason for people to get together, and something like this, a hobby that brings people together. Like I say, we're going to look at some of the conventions and things that you've been to, and what part they play in it as well. But how welcoming a community is it, and how diverse is it? Just out of interest.
It's pretty diverse, and it is actually a very welcoming community. One of the I don't like to jump into it in this direction necessarily, but much like the LGBTQ community, where it's a safe place to be yourself. If you feel you're a certain way or a certain place or a certain type of person, it's a safe place to express yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest qualified. I mean, I will admit that I was a nerd and a geek growing up, and it never rubbed off. And it's been one of those situations where, at least growing up, I was a 90s kid. I graduated high school in 2000, so I was the standard bullied by the jock in high school and stuff like that type of person. So keeping a lot of that suppressed over the years kind of makes you feel a little bit weird about who you are to yourself. So having a community where you're allowed to get together and craft and build things and just share who you are with no filters is very liberating. So it's great to have that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It is fantastic to hear that you can just be yourself and feel comfortable doing that. And I know what you mean. Going back in the day, I was big time into fantasy role playing, Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of thing, which is definitely in that nerd category. You know what I mean?
You kept it in the basement, right? You didn't go to school and talk about it. You kept it in the basement.
Amen. Yeah, literally, I don't think anybody at school really knew I did it other than the guys who I did it with. I kept it very, very much to myself. And actually, my wife now, as she is, when I first met her, and I said, look, there's something I want to tell you. I am a bit of a nerd. I like the fantasy role playing things. She thought it was a sexual thing I was going down the route. I think she was a little bit relieved when she found out exactly what it entailed.
For sure.
Just dice and nothing else more suspicious, shall we say? But no, I think that's fantastic that and I think when you get a little bit older as well, certainly like myself now, I'm in my 50s. You stop giving a shit really what other people think. You know what I mean? You're a lot less interested in that kind of thing. But we're very much more self-aware. I think when we're children, we're very self-conscious. We don't want to put ourselves out there and be different from the herd. And then you realize get to our age, actually being different from the herd is a pretty good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and then you know regret why you didn't do it sooner.
Mm, that's very true. That is very true. So, how did you become interested in it? What was it that piqued your interest in it?
So I would say going back to first couple years in college, I actually got into working at anime conventions, Japanese animation conventions, and those were still, I guess at that point in time, they were finally getting on the rise and getting more popular. Wizard World conventions and Comic Cons were already on their way up and kind of getting up there. But anime conventions were also in the dawn of accessibility and the internet and things like that. Was easier to get a hold of, and it just started to be a growing community. So much like everything I do in my in my social life, is I found a way to get involved with the convention on a professional level, and I started volunteering as managing and building their press department, and just I can't go on if I go on vacation from work, it's to go work something else is the way I like to say it. So I ended up working this convention to just again same reasons that I got involved in steampunk. It was a place to get away, be myself, be weird, not be judged for it, stuff like that. And a friend of mine back in about 2015 asked me about if knew anything about steampunk, and dragged me up to TeslaCon in Madison, Wisconsin. And they were already established a couple of years into their convention, and I'm like, sure. I was into anime. I was into cosplaying already, so I was aware of those kind of things, and really didn't know much about steampunk other than the quick search I did on the internet. And through some really, I remember going thrift store shopping and seeing what things can I crisscross, mix and match, and make it a steampunk outfit to fit in. I don't like to go into civilian clothes when I go to Renaissance fairs or anime conventions because it's kind of want to be a part of the community that's there a little bit more than just being an observer. Although people watching is one of my favorite things to do at all of these conventions and things like that. It's just to sit down and see what people come up with and their creativity with costuming and things like that. So, yeah, I let them drag me up there, and before the end of that 4 day convention, I was volunteering in their tea room and already working there and kind of established there, and I was welcomed back, and I've been going every year ever since, minus COVID and things
Yeah.
like that. So, but yeah, we it was one of those things. I did compare it to an anime convention, and I will say after about 14, 15 years in anime convention operation, I ended up moving out. I think they got too big and their structure got a little toxic as far as management. Um, and the interesting thing about steampunk is the draw in audience demographics. And as much as it's a double edged sword, right? Because it's a place where you can kind of go back and be a kid. But I like to say that I kind of grew up and out of the social structure of anime conventions, and I grew up a little bit, um, where it's not actually like really the case because I'm still being a kid and you know living in fantasy worlds and stuff like that with the steampunk convention, but the age demographic and just the I get almost maybe British pop proper is one of those key components of being in the steampunk community. So it felt like I was growing up, but still having that place to go. So
That's cool. So yeah, there's a very sort of Victorian England theme, isn't there, throughout the
oh,
dress,
for sure.
and then throughout the conduct. Why is that? Just out of interest.
I don't know. I think maybe it was because they at least at that point in time, industry wise, they were a little ahead of the game, and it was a good way to kind of spin off where we're going. I think if we look back, and I might get a lot of costume friends yelling at me for this, but maybe if you look back and you look at U.S. culture in those dates in that time period, we were either still kind of piggybacking off of what was going on over there, or we really didn't have our own set staple here yet. So it's powdered wigs and being fancy proper because we were still, I guess, in that transition period of being our own place. So I think that's where it comes from. But I also what fascinates me about it, and it's actually one of the things I still actively try to get into when I get into my steampunk persona, is the properness of it. The way they talk is different. It's almost like you gotta flip a switch in your mind to address things and approach things a little differently because it's not even a language boundary at that point. It's a I guess it's a state of development or a state of delivering your messages is different because the words you use are a little bit more thought out and sophisticated.
Yeah, I know what you mean actually. So when I was growing up, I loved the stories of Sherlock Holmes written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and obviously he just bridged the gap. I think coming over from the Victorian era into the I forget who came next. I'm not very good at my kings or queens of England. I know my presidents of the United States better, which I should be ashamed of. But yeah, that there was that kind of thing. And funnily enough, I've just had some friends over from Texas, and we started off in London, and we travelled up to Edinburgh, stopped off a whole load of places. And one of the things they love doing, badly, I should add, is that British accent, and how I speak. They were sort of speaking like that, or they thought they were. It wasn't especially close, God bless them. But yeah, there's a very proper way of speech, and when you speak with that Queen's English, it's fantastic to listen to. Like I said, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and TV presenters, they were it was just then just changing over into that sort of colloquial style of speaking that we get now, the different dialects. Back then, everybody had to speak very properly when they're on the television, and it was fantastic. So you mentioned cosplay in there. Just
Yeah.
how big a part of the community is about the dress and the costume?
Well, I think there's also kind of two parts of the community. There are people who I use the word civilian when I go to like Renaissance fairs and I don't dress up in garb or cosplay. I will also kind of say the same about the conventions. There are plenty of people walking around. TeslaCon's interesting because it's a themed event every year. So sometimes you will get characters pulled more from that theme than actual steampunk. Sometimes you get a collab of the two. But usually, the nice thing about steampunk is uh, it's um, it's immersive. So it's probably closer to 70 to 80% of the people are trying to dress up in some fashion to be a part of that. And that again, it could be because my introduction was TeslaCon, and since TeslaCon, I've gone to some other conventions and other workplaces that are steampunk themed, and it's not quite there yet, or their immersiveness is not as focused. We talked earlier. We actually connected because of Chicago this past couple of weeks ago, and I would say the immersion is a little less integrated into their convention. They're a newer convention, but TeslaCon set the bar pretty high for me when it comes to what to expect out of steampunk conventions.
Oh, that's cool. So yeah, I mentioned costumes, and you literally put the steam into steampunk with one of your costumes that you made when you were literally a living tea caddy, weren't you?
Yeah, so this I have a alternate persona, Mr. Steeps. I created him probably in what did I want to say? I actually took some notes on this. I created Mr. Steeps um, several years ago, and then I created a backstory for him and pushed it back even further to basically uh, bring him into the same time period when I came into steampunk with my first TeslaCon event. And what I have been doing with him year after year and just in general is I've been developing him as a character and building things. He is like a Sherlock Holmes meets Jack Sparrow meets MacGyver uh, type of steampunk person. So he's always fiddling with gadgets and building stuff. And I built a tea caddy for Chicago Steampunk Convention this year and walked around legitimately serving tea to people. It was basically a vest worn uh, device, and it was functional. It was practical. I'll actually give that to you. Uh, and yeah, it was great. A lot of people were giddy just to see it as a thing, And then the fact that I was actually pouring hot water out of my thermos and pumping water into them, handing them tea, sugar, sweeteners, all the stuff they wanted. It was there. It was functional. I had a cane there with a teapot on the top, and I actually had steam coming out of that. Every few moments, I'd walk by, and it would kind of just be there. So it's like one of those things. It's like, what can I do to have tea with people on the go? And that really developed from ideas going quite a ways back because I have a big backpack that unfolds that actually turns into a table that people can sit down and actually have tea. And that is bigger, more involved. But it's the idea of sitting down and having tea with two people uh, and just kind of enjoying, you know, I guess that also is being pulled from the British and the UK, where tea was one of those social things.
Mm. Yeah, it is. Tea is a big thing over here. I happen to not particularly like tea. I'm a coffee man myself, but I will say this: that outfit is absolutely fantastic. I like the idea of being able to fold out a table. Oh wow,
Yeah, yeah. So
that's
there's my table, and yeah, it's a bit involved, but
it
it's
looks it.
something that it's stable. It stands up on its own. I fold it up and put it out my back and keep walking. It's a lot heavier than the one I took to Chicago. Takes a little while to set up too, but yeah, it's one of those fun things.
Yeah, that is fun. It is really really cool. And I think if you saw it, a lot of people will have gone to that convention and will have gone away and will remember that and just that about it. That is incredible. So yeah, so like you say, dressing up's a big part of it. Mr. Steeps obviously he's got his tea themed stuff. So how much of that did you build, just out of interest?
So I built a lot of the actual components. Um, I commissioned my hat, which is a very, very involved hat. I
Mm.
have a hamster with antelope ears on it. I call it a hamster elope. He actually rides on my hat. The hat opens up. There's a little uh, fake candle in there flickering away, and on top of the hat is actually a teapot. So the idea is the hamster keeps the fire going on the tea, on the teapot, on the kettle, on the hat. That was a long project and a long time going, um, too, because it was just one of those, how do I make this fun and integrated and things like that to just keep it involved. But yeah, I'll either make my stuff or leather work is not my forte right now. I'm not very skilled in it, so I commissioned it. And for someone who does a lot of work for other clients who are Renaissance Fair and people, things like that. And I'll either commission it or I'll thrift it or I'll build it myself. I don't usually just go out and buy things and then, I buy things and then I'll modify them heavily and make it work for what I'm looking for. Like the teapot table that I showed, that's actually one of those wall mounted Haida desks that fold down like in a kitchen pantry or something. And I just put legs on the other side that fold up as well and kind of stole the concept of it there and put it to good use and refurbished it a little bit.
That's awesome. That honestly it looks really, really cool. How big a part of it is it, you know what I mean? When you see other people that are there that are dressed up in different characters and different outfits, is crafting a large part of it?
I will say a lot of conventions do have like maker areas where they do things kind of in real time. There's a couple of places that I go to, and they have guys who are like tech stuff. They'll bring out just buckets and buckets of miscellaneous bid bobs and costume pieces, and it's just a look at stuff. And if something pops into your head and you want to do something with it, they let you make it right then and there. Chicago had a whole hallway dedicated to a Maker's Mart area. There was soldering guns plugged in and all kinds of stuff just laid out there for you to get to work on things. And I think it's a big component of doing things like that yourself. Maybe just as part of the steampunk thing, thinking going back to when steampunk became or at least the time period they choose to go back to is like the late 1800s, which also tends to be the dawn of the industrial age in a lot of areas in the world. And it's kind of the idea of what if this was a little bit more close to home, what went off a different way. So, maybe major technologies were more based off of steam powered things and cogs and things like that. And there's a whole set of subgenres of steampunk that kind of either work in tandem with or are spun off of steampunk. There's cyberpunk and there's diesel punk and ether punk, which is more magic and mystic rather than the steam integration. Biopunk, which is a more leaning towards nature. Mr. Steeps is kind of a steampunk biopunk hybrid because he's kind of a vagabond, wanderer type person, just learning about the world. And then there's atom punk, which is about like nuclear energy being the key focus. And when you go to a place like TeslaCon, you will see merges of all that kind of stuff. I've seen some steampunk outfits that look so much closer to something Daft Punk would come up with than steampunk themselves. But it's one of those things where it's more of an ooh and ah factor and not a well, that's not steampunk. It's definitely one of those things that is, again, going back that it's an acceptance culture type thing.
I had no idea. I had no idea of those different types of genres, and people are welcome into them all. Obviously, you'll have your favorites that you'll go to. You have your go-to genres, but people are open to them all, are they?
Yeah, usually, or at least they're not shunning them. I don't necessarily shun them. I don't know of any conventions that are like strictly diesel punk or strictly cyberpunk or anything like that that are big enough and mainstream to, I guess, catch my attention to go and do them. I think most of the ones that I do know about are under the umbrella of steampunk, and some people just choose to go to these steampunk events and bring their alternate persona into them and roll with it that way.
Yeah. I like the idea of an alternate persona. I really, really do. That's fascinating to me. And I guess ours being on the podcast, we'll probably have to incorporate some microphones or something like that into it. So maybe we should have a go at making our own podcasting table that we can carry around with us from time to time.
There we go.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that would be quite cool. That would be quite cool. We'll rely on Gaz turning up for that one, like. But yeah, so these conventions then that you attend, tell us a little bit about those. Tell us about the first. The first, I'll be interested. So the first one was the one was it in Wisconsin? Did you say?
Yeah, Wisconsin. So it's Madison, Wisconsin, which is a little, I think, a little northwest of the center of the state. Maybe it's northeast center of the state. That was 2025. I mentioned TeslaCon a couple of times. It's kind of my home convention now, but it's really interesting because the gentleman who owns and operates that, it's technically a business event, not a nonprofit organization like a lot of other conventions tend to go nonprofit routes for various business structure reasons. But Eric, his name is Eric, or Lord Bobbins is his alternate Steam persona, but he runs this convention. He has a really good relationship with the hotel, so the immersive feel of it is all over. He puts signs on the wall that are flyers for events and other panels and things like that that are going on in that time period, and all the art is done up in his style and what he's looking for. My first convention in 2025 was the Wild West, and it was themed in the year 1885. And what's kind of special and unique about TeslaCon is it's a story, and every year is a new chapter to that story. So it's always the convention ends, and the next one kind of picks up and it starts a new adventure. He has I guess, a pseudo department of theatrical people that actually come in and also take part of that convention. So opening ceremonies isn't a typical opening ceremonies. It's usually a theater staged play, more or less, with characters and actors. And then throughout the weekend, those actors will set up and partake in scenes. Again, it's kind of like going to a Renaissance fair. One of my favorite years at that convention was several down the line. We did Murder on the Oriental Express, and a tea room was staged out like a tea cart, and that was great. And one of the murders happened in that room. We had someone manning the lights, and it would flick down and flick back up, and suddenly someone was laying on the ground, and it was a big to do, and it was one of the best and worst experiences in a tea room. The tea room tends to be very popular, and it was very crowded, and because the way we laid things out, it was not easy to get people in and out through traffic wise, but it was one of those things that really sticks out because TeslaCon cares about the immersiveness of it. They've been to Paris and Romania. We did a Battle of Britain in 2018, and we did a War of the Worlds, which brought aliens into our I guess I'd say canon for the world that is TeslaCon. And we did Hawthorne Manor after that, which was actually very fun, very phenomenal. A lot of Addams Family vibes on that. We had a what was he, about 9 foot wide in diameter spider with a top hat and monocles all over the place, just chilling in the lobby because why not? It was pretty fun. We also did one year. We integrated a Curse of Anubis, so we were in Egypt, and he decided he has these tiers of programming and VIPs and things like that that you can get into. And it was one of the first years he decided to turn one of the hotel panel rooms into an escape room, and it was very Egyptian themed. And he decked it out, and like I said, the hotel is really cool with all the things he wants to do. But he top to bottom out of carved painted foam, did hieroglyphics and things like that. So the escape room was a big tomb you had to get out of. But floor to ceiling, it was decked out as if you were in a pyramid somewhere. And short of the heat that didn't exist in the room, that would be there in Egypt, it was phenomenal to just walk into another world.
I mean, it does sound fantastic. I'm learning all sorts here because one of the things I was curious about is just what went on at these conventions. What was involved, what were the storytelling, what was that aspect like? And actually, it sounds really diverse from aliens to Egyptian, and all the other different aspects that you've just discussed there.
Yeah.
It's a pretty broad topic, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things too where it's a blessing and a curse because you can't be everywhere at once at the con. You there are things that happen that you hear about later or afterwards, or we have a strong Facebook group that tends to be like a fan page where people post pictures of their involvement and things like that. At this point in time, I actually run their tea room, and I'm schlepping tea and Turkish coffee, 4 days a week, and uh, it's great. It's awesome. It's a place that people can come in and relax and sit down and have tea and some confectionaries. I hear a bunch of stories, secondhand from what they're dealing with there, and it's nice because we keep that tea room also immersive, and we have activities and events that go on in there, and it's also, but you're missing out. You can't be everywhere at once. Like I said, there's panels that go on that sometimes further the story. I know we have a series of games that go on that also kind of further the story. Um, and a nice thing about TeslaCon, especially in the earlier days when we were first getting going, things that you can't write or plan to happen end up happening just out of happenstance, and it changes the course of where the convention goes in the future years. It's just really kind of phenomenal to see how the community itself is kind of the captain of the ship or the airship, if you want to get fun with it, and just things steer off in directions that we don't really know of. We have a general plan. He does have a end date for these conventions. He has an end to his story. He snuck about 6 more in there in the last couple of years to keep it going. This coming November, we're actually going to be in Oz, so that'll be fun to deal with. Last year we were the tier of Odin, so we had a lot of very Frozen-esque um, storylines going on. We had trolls and all kinds of fun things happening, and yeah, it's just one of those things where it's interesting to see things get steered in different directions because of an interaction with random guests that just caught the attention of things. Um, one of the reasons Mr. Steeps runs the tea room now is because of that. I guess that growing demand for that presence there, and I kind of make it fun. At least I think I try to make it fun. It's
So
fun for me. So
it certainly sounds like it's fun, and certainly the character and the outfit and everything that you have going on, all the paraphernalia looks like a lot of fun to me anyway. Something I'd like to see for myself. I really, really would. Like I say, like locally here in Crewe, we have one. And I probably should have gone to it. I probably should have
yeah,
gone to it, even if I'd have just gone as myself, just to experience it firsthand, just to see what it was all about. Because it's always been curious. Like I said in the green room there at the start, my interest in it stems from like the background in fantasy role playing that we did in a game called Space 1889, which I didn't realize was really steampunk until after the fact, after we bought it and we got interested in it, and obviously, you were just saying then the theme for Chicago next year is
Space 1889.
yeah,
So I have to
that's
figure out how to bring some of my. I have a bit of a chest of steampunk stuff, and I will have to dig through and see what we had pulled from our Mars trip in War of the Worlds, and see where I can bring some of that stuff back into it.
definitely, definitely. So, say for myself, say if I want to go to see this steampunk convention, I want to head over to Crewe when they do that in the summertime. What would be your best advice for a newcomer for one of these conventions?
I would say keep a positive attitude. Don't be afraid to stop people and ask questions. A lot of, I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for the rest of the community, but I do dress up for the sake of knowing my picture is going to be asked to be taken with people. And if you have experienced something like a Renaissance festival, almost kind of going with the same kind of mindset is, people are there to have fun. If you don't know something or you want someone to sit down and elaborate about something, strike up a conversation with them. That happens all the time. I learn a lot of things about other people and what they're doing, and how they got into it too, just by kind of bumping into a stranger, which is bumping into a stranger and having a conversation with them, which is really out of character for me. But Mr. Steeps doesn't seem to mind. So it's one of those things where it gets to really pull yourself out of that character. I wouldn't feel, at least for your first couple times, if that's how you are, don't feel like you're obligated to engulf yourself in the steampunk convention and find yourself. I would say I probably went to 4 or 5 actual TeslaCons in a generic steampunk uh, feel before I actually decided that Mr. Steeps was something that needed to actually be born and come into the light of being more than just I'm dressed up and walking around and fitting in, and we'll see how this goes for another year because I'm not at my 9 to 5 working on my job. So
Interesting. So, just out of interest, then you said at the start there, and obviously, you're very much within yourself when you were younger. Didn't let that side of it come out because of obviously, like I say, there's some real shithouses in the school system who don't treat people particularly well, and not just students, some teachers too. But this character then, Mr. Steeps, has he helped you a little bit? Then find yourself a little bit by being somebody else.
oh, for sure. I think with anybody, when you, even if you're, I don't know, an artist and you're writing comic books or you're an author and you're writing stories that involve other people, there's so much of yourself that you put into them, but you're also creating somebody who's not you, and you need to endow them with other characteristics and things that are maybe not as comfortable for you. I know I have friends who are authors, and I know a lot of people who are writing comic books and developing storylines like that who really have to like shake themselves off a little bit after writing something like a graphic horror scene or something like that that isn't it's the villain side of the story that they're telling, and they want it to be hitting true to home, but then you realize that it was also you who thought up all those details to go into this, and you really got to like shake it off and you know put that out of your mind that that was something that you came up with. But on the flip side too, like, Mr. Steeps is, uh, 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 Mr. Steeps is like me pausing to think about it right now, it's not something he would do. He would just kind of go with it. He is someone who kind of just develops solutions for things. He is a more of a people person than I am. He is probably as much of a people pleaser as I am, but he has that persona to be there to comfort and help people through problems and just uh, 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 my personal views on like a therapist growing up has always been sometimes you just need someone to talk to, right?
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes people get paid for you to talk to them about things that you just verbally need to get out. You spun it in your head 600,000 times, but getting out for someone else's ears to hear it is one of those things that has value to it. Um, and it's one of the reasons I abandoned my therapist career in college because it's like I can't bring myself to charge people money for listening to them, and just letting them let it out. So, uh, Mr. Steeps kind of is that person. Is like, in what else better setting to do that than under having a cup of tea with somebody?
Hey man, yeah, that is the perfect way to have that conversation. Where did the name Mr. Steeps come from out of interest? And also, does he have a first name?
Okay, so without getting too carried away, so I'll back step one step here for a second. I am starting to write and fabricate I don't want to call it a novel, but basically a series of storylines, which are journal entries to Mr. Steep's experiences going back to the original TeslaCon. And my scapegoat to that was he woke up in the tea room at TeslaCon in 1885 and had no idea who he was. So he's some sort of amnesia-ish type of thing, but that was the launch point for him to start retaining memories and building himself through this world and this environment. Um, and it's also one of the reasons he's a vagabond and he's traveling and meeting all kinds of people and talking with people. Um, and I've got more details to that I'm writing, but I haven't put any of this stuff out yet. Ideally, I think what I'm going to do is just create a blog and start publishing and then pushing out on social media so people can kind of have fun with it. But I will. I'll say because TeslaCon did do War of the Worlds and opened up the universe, I will say Steeps is not of this world, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, yeah, it's good. I think it's good to have a little bit of mystery about a
Yeah,
character. Definitely, we don't need all the details. If we have all the
and there's
details,
certainly a lot that I don't know yet either, too. So it's just it's one of those wake up 3 in the morning. It's like okay, that's an idea. I can run with that, and I'll write a couple of lines and sentences and elaborate on them later, and uh, just add to a story and kind of build it up.
that's cool, dude. I'm a little bit curious about Mr. Steeps. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. So, in terms of it, obviously, there's a good deal of fiction involved. But how important is things such as historical accuracy inside that community?
I would say it's not as important as I haven't seen any fist fights over your bustle is not accurate. I think because it's a fantasy area and history gives us a good launching point because the moment you start modifying something, it's no longer history accurate. Um, I I don't know from my perspective. I don't think accuracy is too important as long as your spirit is still in it.
Mm.
Um, like I said, I haven't seen any fist fights or yelling matches because of things not being on key with things. And sometimes I do hear people talking in the tea room and talking about how they did their bustle or their corset traditionally with actual boning bones and where they source things, and because it was more important for them to get those details correct than someone who might not ever see the inside of their material and their final product. So I don't think it's horrible to not be historically accurate, but it's a good launch point.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I guess what you're saying really is authenticism and joy is much more important than actually being true to history, because like you say, there's a good degree of fiction involved in it all as well. But I don't think even in Victorian Britain people wore top hats with cogs on it as much as I'd like to think that perhaps that they did. So in terms of it all, then, what are the best exhibits then that you've seen in conventions? Something that's really you've turned up and it's really really blown you away.
So I'll say I like things that are both practical and functional. So when someone comes in and has something that is operational and serves a purpose more than just show and glam, I think that's what blows me away the most out of things. I've seen some folks who have outfits that flip inside out and they're just something totally different on the inside. Um, I've seen a lot of folks who do things like that. I actually am friends with someone who we brought in as a guest for TestaCon last year's tea room, because I always want to improve the tea room year after year. I feel like nothing is perfect that time. There's always ways to improve it. So we brought in entertainment. A friend of mine, and they're a couple states away, but her persona is an automaton, and she is in character all the time. She has uh, her friend who works with her now, who's her, like, not companion. Steeps wouldn't do this either. Basically, like her engineer, her worker person when she breaks down, type of thing. So they play off each other a lot with that. And it's Asgard and Lady Wheelsworth. So Asgard's the automaton. She has a story that goes way back to, as well. She's been at TestaCon for a very long time, and we decided to bring her into the tea room because of some of the ways she engages with people at the convention as a whole. Um, she's a curious robot, is really what it comes down to. She likes stealing people's hats. She likes poking at little children to see what makes them tick, type of thing, because she's very curious. She has this really well done crank backpack on her back, so she'll accidentally shut down, and her engineer will give someone a coin and they'll put it in her back and give it two cranks, and she'll come back to life and do a little dancy thing and engage with people. And it's stuff like that is just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something I think that will stick with you. Again, like you say, it's about people participating. You know what I mean? It's getting people involved with it as well. So it's not just them; they're bringing people into their world, like by putting the coin. I really, really, really like that. So if I wanted to find out a little bit more about the steampunk world, if I wanted to say maybe read a little bit of literature or watch a film, is there anything you could recommend me or point me in the direction of?
Um, there are a lot of books out there. None of them jump into my brain at the moment, and I'm a horrible person to sit down and read. um, but there's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of people who are writing blogs out there. Um, Sometimes I actually sit down and I'll just do a Google search for steampunk in my area, stuff like that, and see what's actually popping up, and watch some YouTube videos and things like that. I'm struggling to come up with the author's name. I was reading a book recently who kind of um, inspired Mr. Steeves to do the whole vagabond thing, and it was actually very much not steampunk, as it was as a book. It's just a story of was it 2,000 years in the future type thing, and the world has been engulfed by uh, nature again, and there was a revolution between robots who had sentientness and people. So there were smaller people of colonies, but it wasn't separation because of war. It was separation because of mankind choosing to let robots live on their own and let them do their own thing and stop enslaving them to work in factories and things like that. So they like cut ties with them and just had separate lives. And because of that change in industry, it was a lot of go back to the homesteading type lifestyle for these communities, and they kept themselves pretty small as villages and things like that. And it was interesting to see. And the story follows a character who is going into the mountains looking for a cricket that supposedly has been extinct, and they bump into a robot who decided that it was time to check in on the humans, and that was its mission to just see if they're doing okay, see if they need anything. Um, and they bump into each other early in the first book, and there's two books to the story, and it's just one of those things. Let me look that up while you're coming up with another question because it's a really good book.
No,
Again, had nothing to do with steampunk, but
it certainly sounds interesting, to be honest with you. And the idea of old Jiminy Cricket there out there being discussing robots and what have you. It certainly seems unusual. I do like to read when I get the time. I've got two very young children, so I don't always have the opportunity to read when I'd like to. But that does sound like something that I would like to just read because it just sounds curious. I'm on a cruise in the summer. That might be the perfect book to read while I'm on it. Go on. Have you managed to locate it?
no, I'm a little slow. um,
Don't worry
but
about that.
so and also things like TeslaCon, eh, they pull themes from existing things. Chicago this past year was Alice in Wonderland. Um, TeslaCon is pulled from War of the Worlds and Journey to the Center of the Earth, and uh, going back to a lot of those movies, kind of bring into it. There is a sequel to Wizard of Oz, and the name escapes me, but it is horrifically much different. It is very dark and crazy, and that's kind of more the direction they're going with the trip to Oz this coming year. And I have no doubts that some of our attendees are going to have fun with the costuming and things like that for that storyline. Um, but it's one of those things where a lot of the just general older movies and older books and
Yeah.
seeing movies that are picking up from and trying to be true to the storyline of the period of where they're trying to do the movies at tends to also help with that steampunk because you'll look at something. I'm thinking about a lot of Wild West films at the moment, but taking those things and then kind of steampunkifying it, and then you come up with something like the Serenity or Firefly show with that Kevin's. I'm gonna mess up the director's name. Um, yeah. Anyway, are you familiar with Serenity and Firefly, the movies?
Serenity, I've heard of. I haven't watched it. I remember seeing the movie poster to it, and I thought I don't know. It looked interesting. It looked interesting.
It's space cowboys. It's pretty much pretty much what it is, and it's the storytelling. Joss Whedon
Yes.
did those, and it's one of those things that has a huge fan base behind it. It's very steampunky, although it's never mentioned or brought up in there. But a lot of steampunk ideas come from that kind of show.
Cool. And you mentioned there like a darker aspect. Is there a darker aspect to the world? Because to me it seems very fun, very vibrant. Pardon my English there, and very interesting. But is there a darker aspect to it? People go, down the darker routes with their characters.
Oh, I would for sure say so. When we did Hawthorne Manor at TeslaCon, we had some pretty dark and horrific outfits that came in, and then we had stuff that was very, I guess, slapstick funny, like Adam's Family, uh, Beetlejuice-esque type stuff, which also could be pretty dark if you want to think about it. Um, but I think what's interesting about steampunk as a genre and having the people who explore this thing is it's not really just one universe anymore. You have artists who are taking and making their own universes. You have authors who are making their own universes, and what TeslaCon kind of embraces, which is what I had kind of alluded to before, is the universe changes based on the people that are in it. So I think steampunk is one of those things that it does evolve and grow with how people look at and interpret what steampunk is and how they want to put their world into it.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So in terms of Victorian Britain, there was some very interesting characters around at the time. Not just the royal family, not just prime ministers and ministers that were famous during that time. But the likes of someone like Jack the Ripper and what have you. Do these
Mm.
fictional characters do they get reimagined in the steampunk world?
I would say yes, most definitely. Um, there are people who will pull ideas from them. There are people who will kind of pull them into their world, and it doesn't necessarily go with historical figure either. A good example of that would be we had done 2 years ago at TeslaCon the Mystery of Kraken Island, and we actually sourced a very well known uh, Captain Jack Sparrow lookalike who came out and was Jack Sparrow at the con for the whole weekend, and he engaged with people and came by. He came by and had Turkish coffee from the tea room several times, and it's one of those things that, and it wasn't a steampunk version of Captain Jack Sparrow. It was Captain Jack Sparrow at TeslaCon at Kraken Island, helping Lord Bobbins and his crew. I think they were trying. I don't remember the storyline too much because I'm stuck in the tea room. But there was something about a treasure that they were trying to get at, and some trades off happening there.
Cool. So one of the things I want to ask you about as well, it's hotly debated in the podcast community in terms of the use of AI. Now, we do use AI. If you've seen our images, I didn't draw that. That's created by AI. You won't be too surprised to hear. I think the details of which are pretty clear, and it's really useful. I need to, I make this clear. We have conversations with a couple of other podcasters about it, and they get a little bit of negative feedback. We've never had that. But
Mm.
for us, we've used images in the past, and you're treading a very thin line in terms of copyright laws. When you've created it, and I use that in inverted commas yourself, there's no risk there either. You know what I mean? It's perfect for us when we create the art form for our art form. I'm using very loosely. How much has AI infiltrated the world of steampunk?
So on both sides, and in I guess my opinion of steampunk or AI in general, um, I don't think there's enough regulation. I have a lot of friends that lean towards the um, who are artists, and
Yeah.
it's the issue and the benefit of AI is you plug in some words and it gives you instant gratification on what you want, and in most cases it's free. Um, and at the same time, it's taking away from other artists in the same context. I mean, there are people who are using AI and ChatGPT to write full novels for themselves, and they're writing their novels, writing loosely, and then publishing them on something like Amazon, and really spent no much more time than adding a prompt in there, and now they're finding it as a revenue source, and it's kind of on the lazy side. I will say I've used AI myself several times, but they're much like sourcing my um, outfit for Mr. Steeps. I also have paid a lot for people to do artwork for me. Um, I have, if I don't need something super quick, I will seek out actual people to do it. And I think the trade-off needs to be is there needs to be some sort of compromise where in the steampunk community, and this actually was a hot topic not too long ago with TeslaCon in the use of AI, and there needs to be some sort of just compromise. AI is not going anywhere as much as we all want to push it away and get it out of there, but there needs to be a compromise and some sort of recognition for the people who are doing work. One of the issues I have with AI is how it does function behind the curtain because it scours the internet. It scours already pre-existing other people's work that they put work into who are getting no compensation or recognition for the work that's being used to inspire other work. Um, much like, and it's like, but also not quite the same as people who write fan fiction on other people's works. It's like, okay, I want to take the world of Wizard of Oz, and I want to create another story that has nothing to do with it, that is still in that universe and with maybe some of the characters and things like that. I think going into those, you still either give big nods to, or you give recognition to the original, source. And I think that's one of the biggest things. One of the bigger points people complain about is other people's works are being referenced or used or worked on in that uh, created piece or series of pieces, um, but it's not, they're not getting the credit for it, and even not so much just that, but the idea of people are now running to AI when they traditionally would run to an actual artist,
Yeah.
instead of actually like you know, helping facilitate that industry. They're it's difficult, and now you're also kind of taking work away from artists who have made their lifestyle out of this, and it's kind of difficult to stomach a little bit. So I'm on both sides. I'm at the same way when it comes to uh, it's a weird position for me to be in professionally, because I got into the video production industry in high school. I learned how to analog edit with um, tape to tape editors. There was no undo button on my computer to fix something that I messed up. And usually messing up meant you threw away hours of work that you got to start all over again. Um, Phones were not readily available as a cell phone. This stuff like this podcast, you and me talking right now,
Yeah.
were not consumerable, back then. And it's just kind of mind-boggling where there's several YouTubers I like to watch to keep up on what's going on in the world, and to know that they had little to no college education, let alone broadcast experience. You pick up free software and a phone and a cheap microphone, and you're on your way now. And it's like kids got it so easy these days because it was a couple $100,000 investments to get a video production studio or something like that together back then. So it was it's hard to stomach sometimes, but I relate that feeling to how a lot of these artists and musicians and people who do this for a living um, feel about it, because it's kind of oversaturating something, and there's no real way to make it a competition, because it's free, it's fast. If you don't like what you want, you can ask it to be changed really quickly. Um, and my fight with that on my views is that, whenever I can, I still go to support artists and have work done for me in the traditional sense, and make sure that those are, tagged and circulated as this is what someone does, because I still think, I mean, I've seen so many AI images that were great and fascinating, and you look down and like that person has 6 fingers on their hand, or something. It's always there's something that's just a little off on it. Um, and, an artist wouldn't, probably wouldn't accidentally put a finger on someone's hand.
No, you're quite right. You're 100% correct in everything that you say. The danger is with AI, it's fantastic for someone like myself. There's no financial investment, there's no cost, and the results are virtually instantaneous and editable. You know what I mean? You say, I'm not entirely happy with this. Can you do this? And it will do it. You know what I mean? The image that we created for the episode of this podcast, I created it. Then you sent me the picture of yourself in this rather fabulous outfit, dressed as a tea caddy. And I said, I took the original image and I went back to it and I said, can you update it? So the man second from the left is wearing a tea caddy outfit. And it did it for me in a matter of moments. And that's fantastic. However, it takes away, like you say, my wife trained, she was an illustrator. That was what she did at university. She never got into that world. Back then it was a very difficult world to get into because there weren't many positions. So she ended up going into banking, which is like a little bit of a different aspect to it. But that's what she wanted to do, and that's her passion. She's a very, very talented artist. She's fantastic, the stuff that she creates. However, we're doing people like her out of a living. It's incredible. Don't get me wrong. She'll use it as well now, and so she'll create it, put the images in, and then do things with it. And it is a shame. It is a shame, like you say. We're doing a lot of people, a lot of very creative people out of work. And we have a friend of ours, Dave. He used to host a podcast with us a time or two. Very, very IT literate, and he literally said, "What we need to be doing now, if you want to be, because the way AI is going, you need to be creating and giving content for the AI to work with." That's a little bit about what we do here on the podcast. Now, we normally wrap things up round about the hour mark, but I want to ask you a further question, actually, and
Sure,
maybe a question or two more. We'll see.
go for it.
But
I am all yours for that. At least the next hour and 2 hours or so. So
oh, cool, cool. So you used a phrase to me, which he said, Had I ever considered?" And it was a steampunk culture is dying. Go on, tell us about that phrase. That's an interesting expression.
so it's a very interesting take on it. There's I guess there's a couple content creators running around and saying that the industry is kind of dying, and I don't really like to look at it that way. Um, the way I want to say what I want to say, it is kind of it comes across a little snooty. So I don't think it's necessarily dying. I think the standards of being in the steampunk community are a little just higher than what some people want to bring themselves to. I again going back to the high school nerd thing. Um, that time period in my life, anime and things that I was into was not that popular. Um, D&D was not that popular, but now you can go on YouTube and you see folks doing it all over the place. I had fun side story, and I apologize for jumping off track. I had a high school reunion where one of the guys who used to physically bully me in school on the football team came up to me and apologized because now he's a big e-gamer. He likes to play the football stuff on the Xbox and all that other stuff. And he apologized for picking on me for being a nerd because now he feels like there's a big part of him that is he's a gamer nerd, and he kind of crosses that over. And part of what made the anime and the pop culture and the conventions grow so big, you might hear the C2E2 might be reaching out. It's a big Chicago convention. It's huge. Um, the fact that these things are growing and things are being more acceptable to people and things like that. Um, I think it's because steampunk is still such a close knit social group that people have the assumption that it's dying. But I also, at the same point, think that that's what makes it special to people. Um, with TeslaCon specifically, he puts a cap on ticket prices so that it stays to the size. He doesn't want to change venues because the hotel gives them such great freedom, and I'm sure they make good deals. I mean, the hotel does sell out rooms and things like that, but he does not have the same traditional sense of uh, the way I look at a lot of anime conventions at this point in time. And I feel like I'm really down talking them, and I don't mean to because they are still a great safe place for people to go and be themselves. But it seems once you get to a certain number of attendees, your business practice changes, and it's more about how many tickets can I sell, and not what am I doing for the community. It's no longer a for fans, by fans type attitude. You're worried about revenue generating and things like that. And I think that's part of what makes Steampunk and TeslaCon specifically a little special because it's not about that. It's about maintaining the world that's been built and growing that world, but not at the sacrifice of a new venue or somebody else running the show or whatever the case might be. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's much like the AI thing. It's still ownership, and we as a community can own that without really oversaturating it. If you do go to a lot of the more popular anime conventions in this area, um, it's not really just an anime convention anymore. It's a whatever's popular in pop culture convention. that has a strong lean towards anime. You'll see um, raves that are sold out that run out until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You'll see massive gaming rooms with all kinds of fun art, classic games with like the old Nintendo systems and Atari and stuff like that set up for people to run. And it's like that's fun, awesome, and great. It's giving people something to do, but how do you attach that to your anime, you know, theme that you're working with? And for me, that seems very important. And I think kind of have a slight revelation right now. I think that's what makes TeslaCon as a convention so important to me and makes it set my bar for what steampunk is so high is it is about making the community create what it is.
That's cool. How important are these conventions then to people? Like you say, I think that I'm taking from what you've said. It's really important to you finding yourself, understanding yourself, learning about who you are. You can don a tea caddy, and you can become a different character, and you can still be yourself at the same time, or you can be the person that sometimes you wish you could be in everyday life. You know what I mean? You can live vicariously through this Mr. Steeps character who's got the confidence that you don't have or that I don't have. And I think that's wonderful that people can do that. These things are really, really important, aren't they, to people's mental health?
Oh, for sure. A really good example of that. A couple of Tesla cons ago, Hawthorne Manor. Matter of fact, it was 4 years ago. I got into a car accident. I was okay. I had no car, and Madison is a little over almost 3 hours away from me. So I finding arrangements to get up there, and I was ready to hire an Uber and have them take a little road trip with me, and then on the way home. So it was an expense to get there, but being there was outweighing the and it was perfectly honest. It was me being there for me, not me being there for the convention or the other people who are going to be where's Steve's at type of thing, or any of the other responsibilities I felt like I had going there. It was me. I needed that trip for uh, self sanity keeping reasons, and that there are lengths that you go for things like that are in your life.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. I love to hear that. And I enjoyed that. Not obviously about the car wreck part, but I love hearing that story. I think any outlet like this that's out there, I think is fantastic for people. To understand themselves, because life is a journey. I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but life really is a journey, and it's a painfully short one when you actually analyze the amount of time that we're actually on the planet. But any bit of joy you can bring yourself, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not harming anybody else, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think it's fantastic that you can do that. So, just in terms of these conventions and steampunk in general, what are the common misconceptions that people have about steampunk? Where are the Joe blogs like myself? Where are we misunderstanding what it's all about?
I would have to like dig into your brain and ask you what you think it is
Do that.
first to see where your misconceptions are. But I think because in order to have the misconceptions, you need to almost kind of be ignorant and closed minded to possibilities of other things being out there. Whereas uh, steampunk in a fantasy world, anything kind of like that is it's opening those doors to possibilities, and just not giving it a chance to, even if it's an ooh and ah feature. I mean, it's one of the when I have downtime at conventions or something like that, or I mean a trip to the bathroom, uh, you people watch and you get amazed at seeing what people are coming up with and how they're doing things. Back in my anime convention days, we saw a guy who put together for him and his couple of buddies, and I spoke with them about it. Um, he put together these big mecha robot outfits, but they were all beer or Mountain Dew cases, whether they were the cans for the metal pieces or the actual boxes with the logos on them, and it was just decked out to head to toe with helmets and everything. This is all before EVA and PVC foam was a popular material for cosplayers. This is like uh, early 2000s. Um, and to see that they got creative enough to, well, we're probably a bunch of college kids sitting around drinking a lot, got a lot of these boxes building up, and they did something fun with them, and it's overly ridiculous. Um, and there have been times where I guess mentally for myself, things are just not there and a little uneasy, and it's crossed my mind more than once to be like, you know what, I'm just going to dress up as Mr. Steeps and go walk downtown, or I'm going to go to work dressed up as Mr. Steeps, and just let reality is too hard and it sucks right now. So let's be somebody else. Let's go somewhere else and see what my brain comes up with. It's that kind of mindset that's just open and freeing, and I can't really wrap my head around why someone would close themselves off to that. I don't see a benefit to safeguarding yourself around ideas of what could be and how could things be better, things like that. So it's a hard question to not try to dance around. If I
Yeah,
did a good job about that, but yeah,
you did a great job of answering. And you know what, I like to throw these questions in there that are difficult to answer. Normally towards the end of episodes, you know what I mean, where people think, "Holy hell, have you asked me that for? That's not fair." But no,
oh
you're
sure.
quite you're quite right. If you can go out there and you can bring yourself a little bit of happiness, then there ain't anything wrong with that at all. That's absolutely fantastic. In terms of steampunk then itself, it harks back to a different time, a very, very different time in society. Like you say, the idea of culture, society, how we present ourselves was very, very different in the 1800s, the late 1800s and early 1900s. So, what does that tell us then about the USA and the UK today? That this exists, that where we can go and be those people. What does it tell us about the state of the states and the state of the UK?
I think this is more philosophical than the other question you tried to dive into. I think a lot of this is a subtle or maybe not so subtle reflection on how little power we have over the state of our economies globally and locally, and just things that we don't have control over that affect our everyday lives. I don't know how gas prices are doing over there for you guys, but they're here too. Um, and it's a lot of things that people like to complain about, but there's no control over it either. We can't go and I mean you can't even really protest enough to get the changes made anymore. And that's had a fun conversation over the weekend with some folks from China, or over this earlier this week, and just talking about how you kind of just have your place, and when you're stuck in our current reality and you can't make those decisions for yourself, that can actually promote change. It almost leaves you but to no choice to find some other outlets. And some people can do artwork and paint, and authors will draw. Our authors will write up stories, and comic artists will do stories like that. And these conventions kind of give people, and I will preface that with, I am one of these people. I don't consider myself very talented, despite that the things you're seeing with Mr. Steeps as far as creativity and things like that. I look at that and I see more of the flaws in all of the things that I'm wearing than anybody else. And maybe that's an artist thing in general. I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't claim to be an artist. But it's acceptable. Other people don't see those things. Um, and I think that lets yourself have control over your environment a little bit more than the bigger picture.
No, that's not. Yeah, I think you're on the money there. Yeah, we do have very little say in terms of, I think when I was probably at school, we had the poll tax riots and what have you, that we protested and getting taxation changed in the UK. Didn't I don't think that would wash today. And I think they unfortunately and I used a very generic term, they have learned from that and how to control us a little bit better. And I don't much care for it, but it is what it is, and we don't step out of line. We are the ants marching towards the sugar. So
I mean, that goes back to things like, you know, for a good while, you know, things like cigarettes were illegal, and until the government found, and more, I guess, more up to date is, you know, the use of marijuana and THC and stuff like that. Until the government found ways to make money off of it themselves, that's when it becomes okay. You know, it's because they want their piece, and they don't want to do the work for it. So it's one of those weird things, because I mean, you can grow tobacco in your backyard if you really wanted to. Not necessarily anymore, because there's regulations on it, because the government wants their piece. So it's a double edged sword that's always against the common people. Um, they don't live in our same reality. They don't live in our same world. They are all very well off. I was speaking with someone not too long ago, about how, you know, at least in the way I would look at it in this country is, if you make six figures, you don't qualify for being on the Senate or the House or any other political job. No Congress for you, type of thing. It's like, you are making decisions about United States Medicare and stuff like that. And I don't want to pull your podcast to a
oh, what do
political fight, but it's like, the people make decisions on things that affect the everyday man when they are not the everyday man.
no. Yeah, 100%. They make decisions on things that will never affect them, but affect us profoundly. Now, before we let you go, I know you had a number of pictures there that you have on your laptop. Is there anything that we haven't covered off that you wanted to discuss with us? Anything that we've missed out?
I'll just pop up a couple here for you. We were talking about AI. I kind of had it queued up. I wanted to shout out a good friend of mine. Her name is April Lionheart. She is an artist who likes to do artwork and everything else like this. And as much as this has been called AI, this is a picture of Mr. Steeps that she has done up for me, with her own take on it. I took a bunch of pictures of myself. She does go to the TeslaCon convention, and you know, we're friends. And I commissioned this work from her, and makes me happy every time I look at it.
That's
This is
beautiful.
it's a better picture of Mr. Steeps than Mr. Steeps himself, because I don't think I look that good dressed up like this. But it's one of those situations where, again, this took a lot of time and energy and effort on her part, and you know, AI could have come up with it, and it didn't. Thankfully, she did, and I'm grateful for that. So, we were talking about my tea caddy a little bit. This is where I start. This is my drawing board. This is my sketch up of it, and yeah, it's one of those things that it's got to start somewhere. Sometimes an idea will pop into my head, and when it gets onto paper, it's good enough for me. Other
That's
times,
cool.
like in this instance, the tea caddy itself actually was um, came to be because at TeslaCon, the tea room, they give all of our vendors passes to the tea room as a package and part of their um, complimentary service for being a vendor at the convention, but they don't get time to leave their booth and come to the tea room before we close. So this is what my initial effort to bring the tea room to them. So I'll have one of my staff members, one of my volunteer guys, put it on and walk around and get tea into the tea room for their vendors.
That's cool. That is cool.
See, this is that Asgard, that automaton that I spoke with about. This is before she started working with Lady Wheelsworth.
That's
And
cool.
this is, I think, this might be one of my earlier conventions. This might be Hawthorne Manor, as Mr. Steeps, but she's very elaborate with everything that she does with her outfit, and she until she gets to her hotel room, she is in character the whole time. It's great.
Fabulous.
I like that Mr. Steeps is a bigger part of me, so I can not live up to that kind of standard to walk like a robot everywhere I go. Um, but it's one of those great, great things. Let's see. I don't know if this will fit on my picture with you. That's
Oh,
me and our Jack Sparrow look-alike that we hired for our yeah,
that's not a
horribly
look-alike. That's not a
yeah.
look-alike. That's Johnny
That,
Depp.
no, that's the look-alike that we had on board, and
Jesus
he
Christ.
acted just as good. It was fantastic. TeslaCon, I will give a little more on that actually. The gentleman who owns it, Eric Lord Bobbins, has a background working on Star Wars and Disney in various capacities. His theatrical immersiveness for the convention is important to him. So being as accurate when he wants to bring ideas into it, he does his research, and we have had Oscar-winning guests and Hollywood actors in different capacities come in, being a part um, of the convention on a regular basis. I don't remember the name of the group or their actual status, but there are actual costuming people, I think is might be the right word. I'm sure Eric will correct me later. But there are people we are bringing in from the actual Wizard of Oz world to
Wow.
come and do some costuming and panels and information about what actually what makes it a thing to be uh, in that world.
I have to ask though, just going back, are you 100% certain that wasn't Johnny Depp who turned up?
I'm 100%. I'm 100%. I'm actually friends with it. So his name actually, I will give you a little information, and maybe if your viewing audience has a need for someone, and I don't know how much it costs either, but I know he does do birthday parties and stuff like
I
that.
imagine
And
expensive looking like that because he looks
um,
exactly like him.
his name is Janty Chadsall. Um,
Great name. Great name.
yeah, Jantychattaw. And uh, he does do Captain Jack. He has done the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, other places.
Yeah.
There was a point in time and a plan for him to come to a Alice in Wonderland themed TeslaCon, but Chicago came up with Alice in Wonderland. We didn't want to back to back that anytime in the near
Yeah.
future, so we went a different direction with that. I say we like I had a decision. It was all Eric, but it's one of those situations where we care about the immersiveness, and he does his due diligence when it comes to getting some special guests. Um, we have some DJs and bands come out. We do a couple of dances through the night. The fun thing about TestaCon is it is a 4-day event. So it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. Thursday and Friday are kind of slower, which is nice. People are still at work. But there's always something to do. There's either room parties or there's balls or pseudo raves type things going on. But it's 4 days of nonstop crazy.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like fun. So I asked earlier about movies and books and what have you. What about music? Is there any music that's popular in the steampunk community because it just fits into that remit?
That is a very good question. I don't know. I think there might be some musicians out there that might take some inspiration from the steampunk uh, community and maybe their lyrics. But right now, I'm trying to think of what steampunk would sound like, and I'm keep jumping back to a something I haven't seen or watched in probably a decade and a half. There's this wonderful 3D graphic video called Anna Music, and it was basically the idea of music being done by like marbles falling onto strings and stuff like that. There is a gentleman who has a ridiculous machine out on the internet on social media right now who is basically it's a crank that he keeps turning that sends marbles various places, and he has it set up to be a complete song. I'll send you the link when we're
Yes,
offline. You can hunt it down. But I just look at that and realize this person had to come up with the song and then reverse engineer every millimeter of his contraption for timing and placement and to make this whole thing kind of work. And he's got like huge levers he pulls on it, and he's constantly cranking to make these balls do this thing. And I thought I got complicated with Mr. Steep's folding out table, and this guy's over here like doing this for the sake of his own personal enjoyment, and it's great. And the song is just magnificently beautiful too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, please send me that link. I'd like to see that. I'd really like to see that. But we've shot over. We normally keep the episodes to around about an hour out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
We're at the 90-minute mark. You could fit a game of football in terms of this podcast. I
I
just sorry, go on.
I could ramble on forever on this stuff. It's been a enjoyable part of my life for the last, you know, 12, 13 years now. So when I have a chance to talk about something I really like, I will spend as much time as I can possibly do it to keep that in my mind.
Oh no, listen, I really appreciate you choosing this podcast to do that on as well, because it's something that we were curious about and that we were interested in, and I definitely feel like I've learned a lot tonight in terms of just what steampunk is, and more importantly, what steampunk means to people, as an outlet. I think that's fantastic, and it's not something that I'd really put too much thought in before we sat down and we spoke today. So I really, really, really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and just being really honest with us in terms of the things that you've shared. It's been fantastic, and I really, really appreciate it. So, is there anywhere we can recommend that people can go on social media to find out more about these things?
I would, I mean, Google search is always a great start, just to see what's out there. You can definitely visit the TeslaCon's website. It's just www.teslacon.com. I would also, I think with this day and age, and I feel like I'm a little old saying this because I guess Facebook is now also like a relic in the eyes of our youth today. But there are a lot of Facebook groups out there that are steampunk society based type things, and that get random other steampunk things get shared in throughout the environments. Our TeslaCon fan page is something I would recommend, just to see what's out there and communicate with people. And very similarly to how you would engage with someone at an event, get on Facebook and ask questions. Ask questions to the group as a whole, and don't be afraid of saying, "Hey, I'm new at this. I'm new to this. What am I looking at? Well, tell me what it's about, and have them do something."
Amen. Great advice, because that's exactly how we found you.
Yeah.
So then, as we wrap this episode up, did you want to say your goodbyes to our listeners?
Yeah, I'll thanks for everybody for chiming in and watching and listening to me ramble about something that makes me very happy. You're welcome to check out Mr. Steeves has his own Facebook page, and I tend to be engaging with people in character on there. I let people know where I'm going to be making appearances at and things like that. It's nowhere near by any means any level of professional caricature that I get hired for parties or anything yet. I did do a friend's wedding as a tea service person as Mr. Steeps, but it was not a paid gig. I'm not going to make money off my pride and joy as much as that probably should be the way things go in this economy. But yeah, feel free to hit me up, talk about anything. If you ever need a guest on your show and you have something that you really want to do a deep dive in, I'm more than happy to come back on and chat your guys' ear off with that.
Oh, amen. Listen, we always offer it to people. When we've asked folks to come on and speak to us, it's entirely up to them. If they want to reach out to us again and say, "Look, I want to come on your show," and talk about this? Well, guess what? The answer is always going to be yes, because you were kind enough to share your time with us. So the least we can do is to repay that favor by having you back on and talk about the things that you want to talk about. So that offer goes to you as well. You know, if you want to come on and talk about anything else in the future, you've got my you got my Facebook there. Just drop me a message. You're welcome anytime back on the podcast. So this has been a fantastic hour and a half, and we really, really appreciate the content. So thank you.
Oh, anytime.
No, our pleasure. So that just leaves it to me to say thank you very much, Vic, for joining us and sharing the stories and hopefully educating people on the world of steampunk and actually what it can bring into your life. I think there's a lot to be learned and there's a lot to be taken from it, and I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be back next week when we will be talking about, I normally say something entirely different altogether, but no. Next week, we'll be talking steampunk again as we have another guest who's talking about making leather outfits for it. So that might be something that you want to join in and listen to, Vic. But yeah, it could be interesting. Sure. You may very well know the individual, I suspect. But yes, thank you very much. And we will say good night. Friends around the mic, kicking back. All right. Day turns into night. Podcast in the spotlight.